With cars getting more and more expensive, Chevy made a pretty big splash last year when they introduced the second generation of the Chevy Trax for 2024 with a pretty affordable price tag starting right around $21,000. Even this fully loaded out 2025 Activ trim is right around $26,000 MSRP, so pretty solid value here. As always, I'm going to go through this thing from the outside in, talk about what's new for 2025, and talk about what this thing has been like to live with. Let's go ahead, take a look. Underneath the hood here, of course, no hydraulics, wouldn't expect that at this price point. We have a nice little inline-3 under here. This is going to be a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder with a turbocharger. This is going to be the same engine as in that Buick Envista if you watched that video. So these are sort of sister cars within the GM lineup. But this thing makes 137 horsepower and 162 pound-feet of torque. Not exactly blinding speed here. Sounds pretty underpowered on paper, but honestly, it's totally fine for the daily drive. But we'll talk about that a little bit more during that drive section. This one is rated at 28 city, 32 highway, so pretty solid for a gas car. And I've been averaging right around 26, 27. Power is going to go through the front wheels exclusively. There is no all-wheel drive version of this. If you want all-wheel drive, you got to go up into the Trailblazer. I do have a video on that as well. And the transmission for this is going to be a 6-speed automatic. Not a lot of 6-speed autos left, especially in full gas cars. A couple in some hybrids, but not too many 6-speed autos left. And new for 2025, this can accept flex fuel. So if you're in an area where E85 is readily available, then you can go ahead and use that in this car. Size-wise, we're pretty squarely in the compact crossover segment here. A couple inches shorter than a RAV4, a couple inches shorter than a CX-5. HRV is going to be like an inch or two longer than this one. So pretty squarely in that segment. Not going to be a problem for parking or driving around tight spaces or getting in a garage or anything like that. We're looking at 7.2 inches of ground clearance, plenty of ground clearance if you're in an area like I am with bad potholes and rough roads all over the place. That's not going to be an issue. This one's sitting on 18s. Depending on the trim, you get 17s, 18s, or in that 2RS, you're going to get 19s. And those are all going to have their own specific designs, and they're going to be wrapped in all seasons. These tires, not my favorite tire here. Even with this low powered engine, I have been able to overwhelm the tires in the dry, so not exactly ideal. Well, we've got all this nice black cladding all around because it's rugged and it's 2024 and everything needs to be rugged. The black mirror caps are going to be standard unless you get the LT trim, then you can get the paint matched mirror caps there. No turn signals in here or anything. Blind spot monitoring in here is actually an additional option that is not standard. Same with the rear cross traffic alert. I feel like 2024 blind spot monitoring should be standard at this point, but we are at this sort of lower price point trying to cut costs anywhere they can. At least it is an option on all the trim levels. You do have this touch to lock here and touch to unlock. GM likes to do the single button on the outside. I still prefer being able to grab inside to unlock and button on the outside to lock, just because it eliminates some ambiguity, but you can see a little stick poking out right there, so you can tell whether you're locked or unlocked pretty easily. The black trim all around, black roof rails are going to be standard. This color here is called cacti green. It's sort of an interesting color. Sometimes it looks a little bit like fluoride toothpaste green depending on the lighting. It hasn't really grown on me, but I have gotten quite a few comments. A lot of people do seem to like this color quite a bit. Not my favorite. Front end here, I like the way Chevy does front ends. Typically they have nice looking front ends in general, but notice that with this one being the Activ trim, it's going to be different than the rest of the model lineup. So this one has the paint color, the paint match color going across here, and then the black down here. All the rest of the Chevy Trax are going to have that swapped, so you'll have the paint color coming down here and then black up here. Black bow tie is also specific to the Activ trim level, unless you get a blackout package on one of the other trim levels, but in the Activ that's going to be standard. And then lots of real real venting, lots of real cooling going on down here and across here. Some fake vents for fake air over here. You do have LED headlights standard with auto high beams. That's nice. Not going to be adaptive, not going to corner with you, anything like that. You'll get LED daytime running lights as well, but this one gets the signature LED daytime running lights, just a little bit of a different design, and that's going to be in the upper trim levels. But on some nice contour through here, got a little bit of this dark chrome down here and just sort of switch things up a little bit. Just a nice looking front end overall. The back end here, I didn't really love the back end when I first saw this car, but it has kind of grown on me a bit. Love that we've got the rear wiper here. I love to see that on an SUV or a hatch. We do have this subtle spoiler with the rear brake light in there. Got the LED taillights, some of this chrome. We do have the parking sensors back here. Note there were no parking sensors on the front, only in the back here. You think that this X here, they used an X in Trax to be trendy. Think of all the money they're saving on letters. Same with Activ, they chopped the E off, so they're saving all that money. That's why this car is so cheap. Then we've got the black badge here. Of course, as I mentioned on the front, you get the black badges here when you get the Activ trim, or if you get the blackout package in some of the other trim levels. Hidden exhaust. This opens up into about 25 cubic feet of space, quite a bit of space actually. You know, I don't really love the measurements in cubic feet, but that's how you compare them from car to car. But there is actually a decent amount of space back here. We got the 60-40 split on the seats there. You don't have any 12 volts or anything back here. You just some hooks. And then underneath here, you do have an actual spare. Love to see an actual spare there. And then you can see all the way through there. And we do have a grab handle, so you don't have to grab the paint. Now there is no kick to open, not even available on this one. And there is no hatch open on the key either. Key is nice and simple, but you will notice one important thing on there. There is a remote start button, and that is standard. So you lock it up and hold that button down, and the car will start right up. Does not matter what trim level, and you don't need to use an app. You don't have to have any kind of subscription. That is just a standard feature. So love to see that, especially at this price point. The inside here, not exactly expecting the life of luxury. It is a $27,000 car. So, you know, you do have hard plastics all around, kind of to be expected. At least they switched up the colors a little bit though, and they did add some texture. It makes a pretty big difference. A lot of times, like, Subaru is especially bad at this, but they have like the flat black plastic, and it just looks cheap. It feels cheap. But this stuff, you know, it's cheap. Obviously, it's a low price point here, but they do a good job of not making you feel like you're sitting in like a Fisher Price car. And all around, you know, everything is laid out pretty well as well. You got the infotainment sort of tilted towards you. You got the nice knobs and buttons for the HVAC. You got nice, easy buttons to use on the steering wheel. And I like the way GM puts your volume and tuning on the back of the steering wheel, especially since you don't really need paddle shifters on a car like this. Really, everything is laid out very well. It's a very thoughtful design in here. And we got the full round steering wheel in this, which if you get the RS trims, then you get the flat bottom steering wheel. Personally, I like a full circle here. If you're into full circles, this is the way to go. One other big note about the Activ trim level is that you get the power adjustable seats. So 8-way power adjustable with lumbar support. These seats are still not awesome. You know, I wouldn't want to sit in these on a long road trip. They're fine for the daily runabout stuff. They're fine for the daily drive. Anything over like 45 minutes or an hour, they might start to get kind of uncomfortable. So not the best seats in the world, kind of par for the course at this price point, but you do get the 8-way power adjustability. You do get the heated seats as well. You even got the heated steering wheel here in the upper trims. You get those as options. But note, if you get any of the other trim levels, including that 2RS, which is the other top spec because it costs the same as this Activ trim, you don't get the power adjustable seats. Essentially, when you get the 2RS, you get bigger wheels for worse ride quality. You get half a steering wheel. They cut off the bottom of the steering wheel, and you lose the power adjustable seats for manually adjustable seats. So I think that one's a little bit of an odd choice. Don't really get the 2RS. It's like a styling thing. It's just more of like a sporty styling, but you lose a little too much for my taste. The Activ trim also gets the yellow trim pieces around the seats and Activ on the seats. Of course, that's not going to show up in the other ones. And you got the yellow trim through the door here as well. You get different
trim colors depending on which trim level you get. You get either the Ecotech seats or the cloth, or a combination of cloth and Ecotechs. This Activ trim level here has the Ecotech, which is just GM speak for synthetic leather. I like the nice round vents. Those look kind of cool. These vents, they've been fine on the days that haven't been super hot, but it does take a while to cool down when it's been like 90 degrees a couple of the days. Really has not cooled down very well. Not super surprising with this small turbocharged engine, but if I lived like down in Houston or something, I maybe wouldn't consider this as seriously as I would up here in the Northeast. And speaking of the HVAC, we got single zone automatic climate here. The upper trims get you that. The lower specs are going to get you the single zone manual climate. There's no dual zone available at all. This wireless charger down here is going to be standard. Got a USB-A and a C and a 12 volt there. Infotainment here, the upper trims get the bigger infotainment here with the 11-inch screen as opposed to the 8-inch. Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, both going to be wireless. And that doesn't even matter if you get the smaller screen or the bigger screen. So even at that $21,000 price point, at the base level, you still get wireless Android Auto, wireless Apple CarPlay standard. So that's pretty cool. Traction control in here, and a couple of just other random pieces of information, your maintenance, your fuel economy, your temperatures, your battery voltage, this sort of simple stuff that you can also move into the gauge cluster here if you want, but you do have to do that through here. You can pick one piece of information you like and throw it in here into the gauge cluster through the infotainment screen. And then other than that, you can control your climate through here. You also have climate down here, as I mentioned. But you can control that through here, as well as some of your sort of driver's assist features. And you have the teen driver thing, which is something that GM likes to put in their cars. You can set up all the settings the way that you want your teenager to have them, so that they can't change it. They can't turn off the forward collision warning or whatever it is that you don't want them to turn off. So you can set all of that up for them, make them be less distracted, hopefully, as well as just a little bit more safe. And you got a real volume knob up here. No heads-up display in this one, not even an option, period, across the board. Nice simple gauge cluster. Does have the big tack in the middle and your speed right in the middle. Nice and easy, your temperature and your range. And then there's a little indicator up here to say how far behind someone you are in seconds. Kind of an interesting touch that GM has started putting in their vehicles. And then your driver's assist, if you have like your adaptive cruise on or something, that will show up there. And a little compass in the corner as well. But nice simple gauge cluster, and I can see most of it even with the steering wheel set where I like it. Actually, that's not true, because I would like the steering wheel to be down a little bit lower, but that's not an option. This is as low as the steering wheel goes. So I wish there was a little bit more adjustability there, but not the end of the world. It's still perfectly comfortable and totally fine. No memory seats or anything. Couple of spots for bottles in the door, a couple of cup holders over here, and a spot for your phone. Auto start stop is easy to turn off right here if you're somebody that hates that. Your lane shove assist is nice and easy to turn off there as well. A little bit of extra space down in here, but no USB ports, no 12 volts in there or anything like that. In the back there, they do have a USB-A and a USB-C only in the upper specs. That's not going to be standard in the lower specs. No vents, but there's a little cubby hole back there. I wish there was a vent, at least an option for a vent in the upper specs at least. Backseat has a surprising amount of space, 38.7 inches of legroom. I really didn't expect quite that much space in this compact segment here, but I fit totally fine back there behind myself. I'm 5'7". Even if I was 6 feet, maybe even 6'2", probably still get some passengers back there just fine. And there's no hump on the floor, so if you've got 3 across, nobody's straddling that hump there. I've got forward-facing car seats back there. My kids have been totally comfortable, totally fine. Rear-facing seats are going to fit fine back there as well. Again, as long as you're not like 6'5". If you're 6'5", then probably buying something bigger than this, but a normal height, up to like 6 feet, you're probably okay with rear facing seats back there. There's no cup holder in the middle, no center armrest, anything like that. Got a sunroof is an option. That is not going to be standard on any of the trims, but you do have that as an option here. And it's not a pano sunroof. There's no giant pano sunroof. Not really surprised that you can't option that. Controls for your sunroof up here, some of your OnStar commands. Since you got OnStar here, you do have the manually dimming mirror here with the switch. There is no auto dimming mirror. There is no home link. There is no spot for your sunglasses. None of that stuff is going to be available on any of the trim levels, unfortunately. But, a manually adjustable mirror is easy enough to deal with. I've been putting my garage door opener down here. You can buy a clip and stick it up here, but really not the end of the world. Generally speaking, it's a nice interior for the price point. It doesn't feel super, super cheap, despite the fact that it's a $27,000 car. Just wish it would cool down a little bit better on some of those hotter days. And I wish it'd be nice if there was an option for cooled seats, but at this price point, really not all that surprised that that's not an option here. Spacious enough, comfortable enough, pretty decent in here. As always, I've been driving this car for the last week, doing actual daily commute, taking my kids around on the weekend, doing like real stuff that you would do if you buy this car, because YouTube is not paying my bills here. So, Trax is not a track-inspired name. It's not from the racetrack. This is, unsurprisingly, it's not going to light your hair on fire. Kind of surprisingly, it is going to light the front tires up if you do have to move quickly. Very strange, like from a stop, if you're trying to hit a gap, and it can light up the front tires even in the dry. So I definitely recommend different tires. I didn't expect that with 137 horsepower here. Pretty quick for, the numbers don't really do it justice. It can move out of its own way totally fine. If you're trying to merge on the highway, it's fine. You're trying to speed up on the highway to hit a gap, you'll be fine. You're not it does not feel as underpowered as the spec sheet might make it sound. And it's got a 6-speed automatic transmission here. The 6-speed has also been fine. It's actually better than I remember the one in the Equinox being. I remember in the Equinox being a little bit, I don't know, I didn't love all the decisions it made, but this one has been fine. I have not had any issues with it. There's no sport mode or anything to make it more aggressive, or eco mode to make it less aggressive. Everything is what it is. And same with the noise in here. The noise level is fine for this price point. It's not going to be super quiet. It's not terribly loud, but it's for a $20,000 to $30,000 car. This is pretty much what I would expect in terms of the noise getting in here. Same goes for the ride quality. Ride quality, not really an issue. It's not beating me up over all the little bumps or anything like that. It is a little bit aggressive on that front braking alert. But, it's not going to beat you up over all the little bumps. It actually rides a little bit better than I expected it to at this price point. The steering is nice and light. It's direct. It's easy. No issues with that either. The brakes, I wish were a little bit more grabby, but in general, I prefer a grabbier brake. But it'll get you there. Not really any issues there. The overall driving experience here, I don't really have too many issues with it. It has adaptive cruise here, but that is only because of the driver confidence package that's added on top of this. Otherwise, you just get the regular cruise. The adaptive cruise works great. There's no lane centering. Can't do super cruise or anything like that. But you do get this adaptive cruise as an option, which will go all the way down to stop and go traffic, and it works great. And when you do get all the way down to that stop, you do have the auto start stop. If you're not familiar with that, that means when you come to a complete stop, the engine will actually shut off to sort of save on fuel economy, and then once you're ready to go, it'll spark back up again. This one has actually been okay. I remember in the Equinox, it was sort of like hit or miss. Like sometimes it would be ready and you'd barely even notice it was there, and sometimes it would just be a little bit jerky and not be ready for you. This one I haven't really had any issues with. It's been pretty seamless. Visibility all around is pretty good here. The back window is a little bit on the tight side. If you drop those headrests down in the back, then you would have much better visibility. I have to have them up there with the car seats back there, or I could pop them off, I guess. But visibility is not terrible, but it's really not great in the back there. Visibility out the sides, totally fine. I do wish that it had blind spot monitoring standard, though. That still seems a little bit odd. Like, it has front collision alert where it will beep at you. You get close to someone and it thinks that you're going to run into them. It's a little bit on the aggressive side, a little bit too aggressive. And you get this like red line across the front windshield here. I wish that was toned down just a little bit, but that front collision warning and the pedestrian monitoring are standard, but blind spot and rear cross traffic are not. Just seems a little bit odd. And then it's got the lane keep / lane departure. So the one that'll like sort of beep at you when you start to exit your lane, or lane shove assist, as I like to call it, where it'll shove you back into your lane. That one is part of that driver confidence package as well. And again, you have the button down here right next to the auto start stop. If you want to turn that off, you just turn it off and it will stay off. But that hasn't really been too intrusive. I've actually been pretty surprised. Usually those kind of get in the way. Plus, if you have your turn signal on when you're changing lanes, like, it won't get in your way. It's really just like if you're trying to go around someone who's parked on the side of the road or something, like if you live in a crowded area like New York, Boston, where there are a lot of people parked on the side of the road, you're trying to go around them and you go over a line to do that, then it'll just shove you back into the way. Not exactly ideal, but for the most part, this one has pretty much stayed out of my way. Anybody buying this car is probably not using the plus minus on the shifter either, but the option is there if you need it. Really, overall, you know, I said in the Corolla Cross video, aggressively fine is the term I used because I love that term. This one, actually, I kind of enjoyed driving this a little bit better than that Corolla Cross. I don't know what it is about it. I think maybe it's just the fact that the steering is a little bit heavier. Now it feels a little bit more engaging, though this thing is not, you know, it's not going to handle on rails or on train tracks. It's not like a race car, but really it does a fine job around town. It's really easy to live with. At the end of the day, we have some pretty killer value going on here. Starting at 21 grand, and you still get Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, both wireless. You get plenty of space. This one fully loaded out in this Activ trim with a couple options on top of it is still only about $27,000. Heated seats, power adjustable seats with lumbar support, a heated steering wheel, and it rides surprisingly well, even though it is underpowered on paper. It drives perfectly fine. It has plenty of power to get around. You really need all-wheel drive, which most people that say they need all-wheel drive really just need better tires. This thing definitely could use some better tires in general. But if you truly need all-wheel drive, you can always check out the Trailblazer or check out that video if you haven't already. I really like that car as well. But generally speaking, I really enjoyed this car. I would get the Activ trim if it doesn't break the bank. The 2RS being the same price is a little bit odd to me. You get the bigger wheels, which is going to hurt your ride quality, and you get some other sort of styling things. Then you lose the power adjustable seats. Doesn't really seem worth the trade-off, getting worse ride quality and worse seats. If I were to pick the top spec of this, I would definitely pick the Activ. It's not going to break the bank. I would get the Activ trim here with the features that I have on this car. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.
Reviews.